Miriam Joy and welcome to my studio. Today we're going to be working on the horsehair pottery with the turquoise stone gourd today, and this is a lot of fun. I was fortunate enough to get to take a private class from Sherry Briscoe, and we did Inch Trail, and she kind of taught me how to do the horsehair. And when I was doing it, I thought, man, I have a wonderful way to do this with wax that I would really like to do. So with her permission, we went ahead and came up with one that's similar, only with the wax. And if you ever get to take a class with Sherry Briscoe, do that. She's a wonderful, wonderful teacher and a great friend. So I teach a little bit differently as we're going. I don't teach the whole thing and then you have to go back and try and figure out what to do first or second or replay it. I do it step at a time and pause for you to complete that portion. And then once you complete that portion, we go on to the next part. So what I want you to do is we're going to take a bottle gourd, and I used one with a rim. If you like that cut better, you could do that cut as well, whatever you like. We are not doing the beading in this class, but go ahead and get that cut off so you have a little bit of a curvature in your bottle gourd, and then come on back and we'll talk about the next step. Alright, now that we've got it cut off and we've cleaned out the inside of our gourd, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our spray paint, and I'm just using like the 98-cent cheap spray paint that I can find from Walmart, and I used flat. And the reason I like flat is I used to use gloss, but if you have some of the pearl left on the inside of the gourd, which means the white shiny part, and you spray it, when you use a flat, it just blends in and you don't know that it's left behind. So I just spray that all the way around and up the neck, and I don't try to do the rim. You get your overspray by trying to do the rim. Now if you do get some of it, I've got a little bit right here, I just take my Mr. Clean and Magic eraser and I just take that all the way off. Now this has been sitting a little bit while, so this guy's going to take a little bit longer. If you've just done it, it comes off easier. So now that we have this part, we're going to go ahead and cover that with our black acrylic paint right on top. And then the reason I use the black acrylic paint, it's so much neater, it doesn't bleed, you don't have to worry about overspray or anything else like that. So that is really nice to use. So go ahead and get that done. We're going to go ahead and decide where the front of our gourd should be, and we're going to pick right in the middle of that area, and we're going to put our turquoise stone. And I'm going to use an oval shape. You can make them as big or as little, or you could use a circle or a diamond if you decided to. And I'm going to put that on. And we don't want to go with an area too big because we can only heat so much of our crayon to make the stone at a time. So you could probably go the next size up. I used the third one from the middle. You could probably do that one there if you wanted, but I wouldn't go much larger than that because you've got to make sure that you're going to be able to control your wax. Now that we have our oval or the stone, whatever shape you picked on, we're going to go ahead and carve the row out. And we're going to choose a bit that is similar size, maybe just a little bit bigger. I believe these are 6mm beads, and so think about what beads you want to use, what you think would look nice. I think the silver with the kind of southwestern motif looks really, really good, especially with the turquoise. So my bit is a circle 8mm, and it's a carving tip or bit. And when you're carving or cleaning the inside of your gourd or anything, you always want to make sure that you have on a mask, and your mask should have an in rating of 95. Now I'm going to use this one so I can still talk through it today. And we're going to take our bit, and I'm going to turn mine on, and then I'm going to pick a place where I want to go. If I hit it on the inside, I want to stay on the inside. right in the middle of that bit, wherever you pick, or if you want the line on the outside, just pick and stay. So you can see I'm going right down the middle there right now. So let's finish this. Now you want this nice and smooth. I'm going to turn it around and work the other direction. And you're trying to keep this shape as nice as you can as an oval. Now I have a little point right here, so we're going to take that off. We're going to concentrate on this middle shape a little bit, just clean it up just a little bit. Now I don't carve as much as a lot of the other people do. I kind of stick to my wax, so I'm sure I don't do as great as job. But then take your beads and make sure that they can lay in there nice and comfortable, that they're not going to slide around. Make sure that's big enough. If it's not, then go back in and make it a little bit wider. Now that we've got the rim painted with our black, we're going to go ahead and base coat the rest of the gourd. And I'm going to base coat it by sponging it on. And this is just a craft sponge. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to wet it. And you're going to wring it out until you can't get any more water out. You want it just damp. And I am going to use the color Linen by Folk Art. And you also could use one that's similar, is Sandstone by Delta. So something a kind of a sandstone color is really nice with this. And I always start at the bottom and work my way up. Now there is a reason that we are putting it on this way, and we want to get kind of a sand texture with our paint. And you can see, we'll zoom that in there, how that is really giving it that texture. So we've got this kind of sand texture roughness going on here. So we're going to go ahead and put that all the way on our gourd. If you need to do 2 coats, do 2, but you really shouldn't. It's okay if some of it shows through. You want it to look kind of natural anyway. And then once you get your gourd all painted, use your dry board to set it on so that the paint can continue to dry and you're not messing it up. Paint the drilled part around the stone with black acrylic paint at this time. Alright, now that our paint has dried, I kind of also wanted to tell you, if you're a gourd person and you do not have the stabilizer yet, you really need one. I actually set this in here while I finished drilling this all the way around the oval, and I actually did go with the 4th oval on this one just to make it a little bit bigger. Now when you're also putting your paint, you don't want to put your paint on here much. If you get it on there, just wipe it off, because we don't want that rough look on our turquoise when we get ready to do our stone here. But that really, the stabilizer is really nice, and if you don't have one, you can go to Bonnie Gibson's site and you can order it off Amazon, and that way she gets the credit and helps pay for GAE. So that's a good thing to do. And also our drying board, so you know what our drying board looks like, and that just helps that dry and get all, doesn't leave anything at the bottom, and you can just set it right on there when it's wet. So now that we've got that on, we're going to start putting our colors underneath our, normally we sponge these, but we're not going to sponge them exactly. We're going to use actually saran wrap or plastic wrap. But think about how you want the pattern to go. You want some up from the bottom, you want some from the top, you may want some just in the middle by themselves. When you see horsehair pottery, there's usually kind of a bunch of horsehair, so you want to think about that as well while we're working. Now, your press and seal will not work, so we want to make sure that we just have the saran wrap or the plastic wrap. They use this when faux painting on walls got real popular in the homes, and we're just going to kind of crunch it up. And it does a little bit different than our sponging does. It's a little bit rougher. And I'm going to start with a gray. And the gray that I'm using is a rain gray by Delta. So kind of between a light to a medium gray here. And I pulled it in and then I pounce it off because you don't want a lot of color. You want to make sure that you can see between that. Now you can see the difference between that. You get more broken up parts when you're sponging with the saran wrap. And you also want to think about if you want one to kind of come down from the top and kind of go around your stone, or however you may want to do that. And you think about them branching off. I'm going to bring one up from the bottom here. And if you haven't done this, you're not comfortable with it, always start on the bottom of your gourd first so that you know how it works. I'm going to do one here. If you get a spot that's too dark, like that's a little bit dark there, it's not too bad, then take your base coat and sponge back into it. We're going to kind of make that one come off. So you can make these little arms off of it, kind of maybe like a branch. Make sure you kind of turn it too, and so you don't get all the same pattern. Want to make sure you leave room in between them. You don't want to have them solid. That one I got a little bit dark. I didn't pounce it off. I just went into it. So we'll show you how to kind of fix that. There is no right or wrong on this. And I poured out way too much paint. I don't need half of what I've got out. Okay. Now I'm going to go back into my first color a little bit and just hit some of those that I did too much on. You'd rather have less and go back and add than to have too much. So remember that rule of thumb, you can always add more. again. I'm going to wad it up there, bring that color out and pounce into that. Now, if you're covering up, you can go a little bit heavier. See, we're just pouncing back into that, and see how that just really softens that back up. So it's nice to know that you can go ahead and fix that. Okay, so we've got that one done. Now I'm going to come back in and I'm going to use Dark Burnt Umber by Delta, and it's just not quite a black is what it is. I'm going to use that color. Try not to pour so much here. And we don't want to go as quite as wide as our gray lines. I want to go on the inside of them a little bit. Keep them a little bit lighter. Kind of get you a flat workable surface here. But I'm going to try and keep it a little bit smaller. Again, pull your paint out, pounce into that. And I'm pouncing this off a little bit more right now. And you could use a medium brown, that's okay. So it's just what I'm choosing to use. If you decide you have other colors that you like better. And again, if you got too much on there, you can always go back and with your first color, your base color, and remove some of that if you need to. But I like the darker look because when I look at the horsehair pottery, I see that kind of burn look where the pottery was, because that's actually what it's doing, is burning it off. And I got two big clumps right there. So I'm going to go ahead and remove those with a Q-tip and come back and we're going to get our white done. Now that I've kind of cleaned up my little dark part there, I'm also going to come in and I'm going to put some white on it. And my white, I just kind of want in different places, maybe not quite following, but a little bit, just to add another dimension to it. And the white, I think, just helps kind of set it off a bit. And if you think that an area needs just a little bit of white on the other parts, you can add just a tad of white in between your layers. But I think that kind of gives it that real pottery look just by adding the white to that. You also, if you think white's too stark, you could also use the ivory on that. Now let's go ahead and warm up our melting pots and we're going to get started on our turquoise stone. There is a reason that we do the stone and then the other ones first, because if you had the horsehair started and you came in and melted the stone, you're going to melt your horsehair. So it is important to do it in a certain order. For my turquoise stone, I'm going to use blue, green, and white. And usually I mix them half and half, but this time I'm just going to do just a little less white to get more of a kind of a greenish color. You also, if you wanted the real light blue or turquoise blue, there's robin egg, and that's also a nice blue color as well. So we're going to let those melt for just a second, and while that's melting, I'm going to go ahead and get my brush ready. And we call these the Miriam Joy wax brush on our website. And I just keep one per color, as you can see, and I'm trying to find the closest to the blue as I have, and I'm going to set it and start kind of warming it up. But I'm going to start by warming this part up first, and the reason that we're going to do that is then it helps make the wax apply more evenly. So that is a nice thing to know, is it just will warm it up and then just apply our wax right on top of that, and it'll be more an even coat. So I've got that guy sitting there and warming. So we're going to come in here. And I'm using a heat gun or embossing tool. And we're just warming that up. If you have any paint on it, as long as it's smooth, it should be just fine. So now I'm going to come in. And I'm just going to apply that. And you can see how that goes on a lot nicer. If you hadn't warmed that up, it would be kind of chunky. And if you need to apply 2 coats, you can. That's starting to dry already. You don't want to mess with it once it's starting to dry, because you want that smoothness. Now, while we're doing that, we're also going to go ahead and we're going to splatter our black on. And I'm doing the same thing. I'm dipping it into my wax, my black, and it's okay if we get a little bit on there, and that's why I'm doing it at this point in time. But I'm splattering my gourd with the black wax. This is crayon. And you can see we're getting some right there, and that's why we're doing it at this point in time. And when it stops splattering, just go and rewarm it up and do it again. And you can see I've put paper down for this right now. The reason I'm using this instead of paint is you get a little bit raised texture. It's different than the paint. All the way around. I'm just going to add a couple more on my rim. Make sure you've got your rim. And I think that looks pretty good there. And we see we only got a little bit on there, but right now it is all dry. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my hobby knife and I'm going to set it into my white crayon first and warm it up. And we're actually going to use it to draw some lines. We're going to do that with our black and our white crayon. And we're just going to go here and there with it just to get some white in. Now if you want your lines thinner, scrape your wax up as you're pulling it out. So however you want that. Now we don't want too much, so I'm going to wipe my knife on now, and I'm going to go into the black. Now what we're doing is making this look like a stone. Your stone have the different colors in it. They usually don't have just one solid piece. Or if it is, you've got a nice piece of turquoise. And I'm going to leave the middle blank and try and pull the black in more on the sides. You can do it however you want to. There's some really great YouTube videos on necklaces, and this is how I do the different styles. So there's a whole bunch of different ways to do these, so check those out on my YouTube videos. And we're going to go ahead and heat this up. The other thing that I put in here, and I'm probably going to try and sneak it in there, is just a little bit of copper right on the top with the color copper. And I might try to just load it on the front of one of my melting pots, just that little area, so I don't have to change my color out. We'll do that and just flick that area just a little bit, and we only want to get it right there, but we're going to do that after we've heated this part. The reason we're going to do it after is because the more you heat it, the bigger your spots get. You'll see when we get some of the black going here. So I'm going to heat it up again. Start on your outside, work it around. Now I pulled my heat gun away a little bit. The closer you are, the more it's going to move. And you just move it till you decide where you want the stone to go. And I like it right there. I think that's perfect. Now try and keep your stone piece as even as flat so it doesn't run away on you. So now I'm going to try and just pull this color on the side just a little bit. It's kind of you doing double duty for the pot, and it may be just as easy to pull it out. You also can use your texture brush plate on top and do this as well. Now I just want not much, just a tad, and I really don't want to get it on the rest of my gourd. See, I've got just a little bit of the sprinkle, but see how that looks like that nice stone. Now this stone I have melted more, so if you want it melted more, then just melt it and it'll blend out a little more, and you can see the colors between the different. This is a little bit more turquoise and this is a little bit more blue, so however you want to do that part. Now go ahead and do that, and then we're going to come back and we're going to get ready to put our horsehair on. The first color we're going to start with is going to be our brown, and then we're going to do less of the black on top. Now the brown is a thicker wax, so it's real important to put it in, let it heat really well, and also we're going to be using our wax tool and warm it up really well. If it's not working for you real well, then warm it up some more, and then warm it in between a little bit more than we normally do our wax tool. So I'm going to scoop up the brown, and the first thing I do is wipe that off, because when you first start, if you don't wipe it off, you get some bigger chunks, and you're going to kind of come down and out almost like lightning striking. So think of kind of maybe about lightning strikes, and you want to have it branch off and pull into different areas. Now this is the way I do it. If you think that you need to do it a different way, remember there is no right or wrong. And remember, if it's horsehair, it's kind of individually hairs, so you may want to think about that and do them all individual pieces. So however you kind of see that or want to do that, and you can see how long that wax has really lasted. So it's really gone a long ways, and I'm going to put some more in here, and you can do less, you can do more. I'm going to put it back in there and let that warm up a little bit more. On my other one, I did a more curly, so whatever you think. If you want them a little bit more curvy, just try not to make them perfect. That's the biggest no-no that we want to make sure that we don't do, is make them all perfect. So I'm going to come down and add some more on this guy. And then but if you really want to get good at it, you want it to see what it looks like, then go look at your horsehair potteries, pull those up online and kind of see how they've got them all going. We had a wonderful trip with Bob and Sherry Briscoe. We got to go to the area where they make a lot of pottery, and they had some beautiful pottery there. It was a wonderful trip. So I want you to go ahead and do this all the way around, and then when you get done, we're going to come back and add the black on top of it. Now that we're done with the brown, if you've not worked with the wax liner before, you're going to love it. Just simply wipe it off and then take your Q-tip and push it in, and you get all that color out of there, and then you're ready to go to the next color. You want thinner Q-tips, so not real good Q-tips with a puffy end. You'd rather have thinner ends. So now we're going to do our black, and again, make sure you warm that up. And black is a little bit thinner than the brown, believe it or not. I'm going to wipe that off, and then we're going to start, and we're just going to come back in. We're not going to do nearly as much black, but more in the center, kind of more the burn part of where the hair would have been. And I'm trying to do them horse hairs instead of lightning this time. Kind of just make them individual pieces. You don't want to overdo it. And I'm going to go ahead and finish that all the way around, and then, believe it or not, we're going to get ready to start varnishing. Now before we start varnishing, I'm going to give you an option here on whether you like the horsehair the way it is or whether you like it melted just a tad. On the second gourd, I have melted it, and you just barely melt it to the point where it kind of turns shiny. And the black melts more than the brown, so you have to be really careful. And if you're not comfortable with it, don't do this step because you can kind of mess it up. But I'm going to show you a little section so you'll kind of have an idea of how it looks. So we're going to take this right here. And see how that is nice and shiny? And then that way it also kind of looks like the horsehair has been burned. But you don't want to do it much more than that, because so you can see how the black is already spreading out a little bit more. So you have both of those options, whether you like it before or after. That's totally up to you. Now at this point in time, we're going to take it out, and I'm going to spray varnish it. I'm going to jump in front of the camera here. I'm going to use my crayon, and I'm going to use flat. And the reason I'm going to use flat is because we're going to put some shiny over our stones so they look like it's a separate piece from our gourd. You could do satin if you wanted, but I recommend that you do one of the lesser and not a gloss. So I'm going to coat it probably with about 3 coats of spray, and then we're going to start putting a separate coat, and we'll be using our Dimensional Magic on our stone. After your varnish has dried, we're going to go ahead and get ready for the next step. But you could also brush varnish this. You don't have to spray varnish it. There's nothing that's going to run or anything on it as well. So what we're going to do now is try and get our gourd set up. as flat as possible, and we're going to put our Mod Podge Dimensional Magic, and this is what really makes this look like a stone. And this is our heavy duty coating that's really nice and thick, and I'm just going to pour it directly onto the stone part itself. And we have our little Mod Podge brush that we're going to use, and I dampened this and I dried it so that there's no wetness to it, but yet at the same time it's not going to absorb more of the Mod Podge up higher. It's going to make your brush last a little bit longer as well. So let's go ahead. Do not shake your Mod Podge. And both the Mod Podge brush and Dimensional Magic are items that we do carry. And I usually do it around the edge first. Make sure that we've got that all the way around that edge. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put a little bit more on here. And when I'm doing the jewelry, because it gets put in the sun, I usually do at least 3 coats. But if we get this put on a little bit heavier here, now you don't want to put it on too heavy because it's not going to be a real flat surface and you don't want it running on you. And what you're doing with a Mod Podge brush is you're just kind of lightly smoothing that all the way around. And you know that you've got it thick enough, it should just kind of gel all the way in. And you shouldn't see any highs or lows. If you've got any highs or lows, then you probably need to put more on or do another coat after that second layer. I'm also trying to get a little bit of a bubble there, but you can see when we look at that, it's all nice and evenly put on. And I'm not quite as worried about it down in the bead area, but go ahead and clean it out. You don't want it really too thick in there. Now this is a little bit tricky because this is a little bit more at an angle here, so it may run just a little bit, and that's the reason we don't put a lot on there. And it's going to take this a while to dry, and you want to let it dry, and if you're going to do another coat, then go ahead and put your other coat on. And we want to get it all the way completely dry before we do our beads. So that's real important. I'm going to try to leave that as straight up and down as I can get that. And we'll let that dry. And kind of check it from time to time. And if it's moved off and you need to go ahead and put another coat on, go ahead and do that. And then after that's dry, we're going to go ahead and put our beads on. Now that our stone has dried, we're going to go ahead and put our beading onto it. And again, I'm using the 6mm beads, and you can use whatever string because the string's not going to stay on it. So make sure it's long enough because you don't want them to go anywhere. And I am using metal beads. I have gotten away from using silver plated beads because they tarnish. And you'd be surprised what turns them. And they're really hard. Once they've tarnished, they're very hard to get them clean again. So these are actually just metal, and I think they're almost as pretty as the silver. You can tell they're just a shade darker, but that is my favorite thing to use. And your needle just has to be big enough to go through the bead. And we need enough beads to go all the way around. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time just stringing the rest of these. And it shouldn't take me too much longer. Now that I've got my beads strung, you want to just hold them up and make sure they fit all the way around. And it's better probably to have a little bit too many than not enough. And I'm sure most of you know by now I glue my stuff on with the E6000, and that's the glue that we're going to put on now. I'm just going to put it all around on that inside rim. And now that you've learned how to make the stones and stuff, you can apply that to a lot of different designs. I think you'll have a lot of fun with that. Different color stones, and you don't have to buy your stones again unless you want to buy them from us. Okay, got that on. Now, we're going to lay this down. Keep your beads all nice and together as you're laying them down. And I'm going to end that one there. Bring this guy around over here. And I think I can get that last bead in right there. So we're going to pull those off. A little extra. And our little one ran away. That's okay. I'm going to leave that for a moment. I'm going to pull my string out. And we're going to put that last one in there. And see how easy that was to string those? They're actually not strung at all. Make sure our shape is good. And then we have our stone in there. And on the little background part that we painted earlier, you may even want to do that black, and then that little area wouldn't show up at all. That may be better on that back part to paint that black, because black is always a shade color. It goes into the background. So that is how we apply the beads, and we are all done with our gourd. So that is our horsehair turquoise stone class. I hope you had a wonderful time in this class, and take what we've learned with the stones, apply it to new designs. I'd love to see what you've come up with. Just have fun with it. And I was sitting here feeling the gourd, and it feels like it's made of sand. It's really got that look to it. It's a lot of fun. So thank you for joining me. If you have any questions about anything we discussed today, please email me at art@miriamjoy.com. Come on over to our website at miriamjoy.com, and we have a section there of MJ videos, which has all of our classes under there, and we'll continue to grow them for you. So thank you, and God bless.